right, Gaurav, I want to come back to you. We stay with those pictures. Prime Minister Narendra Modi is welcome in Tianjin as he's arrived for the SEO summit. Gaurav, the other chatter, especially online, is regarding how India had banned those Chinese apps and tightened the FDI rules. How are we now looking at a recalibration of ties? Because some reports suggest that TikTok is already looking to hire because they see a plausible comeback in India.
Well, that is something where India has been backpedaling, and that is something where India, it had banned the Chinese apps, found them to be a threat to India's security, had argued very vociferously why those apps needed to be banned. But right now, when you're looking at improving ties with China once again, given that changing geopolitical equations, so are you looking at, which is the relationship that you need to balance more? So there is a recalibration that is currently underway. If the relationship with America goes down even further, some indications are that unless Donald Trump sees the light of day, he would want to perhaps impose additional sanctions on India. And that would have a direct impact on various sectors, whether it's gems and jewelry. Again, that's something which is very labor intensive, or textile, which is extremely labor intensive. And these are some of the areas where the impact would be maximum. So is there a way that India can then mitigate the challenge or mitigate the threat that comes from there? And this is where that you will have to then loosen, the restrictions elsewhere to ensure that India's efforts, now with the fourth largest economy, aspiring to be the third largest economy between 2027 and 2030. So when you aspire to be the third largest economy, will you then need more access and then in turn have to give more access to China? Now, it is always a very complex give and take. What happens then is a decision that the government will have to take given the situation. At the same time, do keep in mind, India remains very heavily invested in negotiating with Donald Trump and his administration. India has constantly, not one word against Donald Trump from the Indian government, not one word, despite Donald Trump calling Indian economy a dead economy, or his leaders, saying that it's Modi's war. It's clearly not Modi's war in Ukraine. India is neither the largest importer of oil. The largest importer of oil, as you well know, is China. India is not even the largest importer of gas, which is European Union. And yet you have Peter Navarro and others, who will call it Modi's war. So you notice that, one, this shows India's rising stature globally, that what India does impacts the world. Two, the world expects India to take bigger steps, but then should we be subservient to the Americans and take steps that will serve the American interest? Or is Prime Minister Narendra Modi responsible for the welfare of the people of India and take steps that will benefit the Indian people first? So there is this very complex jockeying that's happening. And if you were to draw a parallel, you're right in midst of that Chakravyuh. There's a global Chakravyuh that's been put in place. America and China remain engaged, in dialogue also and against each other. There is some conversation that's happening that America and China could be looking at a G2 format, but a G2 format, many analysts argue, would be detrimental to American interests, because China's ultimate aim is to be the #1 power in the world. And would Donald Trump actually want to do that, or for the past 27 years, India was seen as the pivot to the American policy in Asia's pivot, and India was the key pivot in the Indo-Pacific region. Now, Donald Trump, in his first tenure, wanted to encourage it. In his second tenure, will he continue to encourage it, or will he take a step back? And what happens to the, Quad summit, which is scheduled to happen in India later this year? We're also expecting the Russian president to visit India at the end of the year, sometimes in December. The Russian president will be in India. Prime Minister would be meeting the Russian president day after tomorrow. So there is so much that's happening in the world right now that you notice complex geopolitics, complex strategies being made. At the same time, India trying to ensure that we come out on top and are subservient neither to the West nor to the East.
Absolutely, Gaurav. And I'd also like to tell you that we have with us on the broadcast Wu Li. He's a CGTN reporter. He is present at the SEO Media Center, reporting from Tianjin. Gaurav, please feel free to come in whenever you want to ask a question to Wu Li, as I want to welcome you, Wu, and thank you for speaking to India today. Also to get a sense of how China is reporting Prime Minister Narendra Modi's visit to China for the SCO summit. What are the big headlines, especially with regards to the bilateral that is slated between Prime Minister Narendra Modi and Xi Jinping? Wu, are you able to hear me?
No.
All right, not too sure if Wu can hear me. We'll try and reconnect that line with him, Gaurav, to get a sense of how this entire visit is being reported by the Chinese, because we understand how tight-knit that is, especially when it comes to China's version on many of these bilateral issues. But Gaurav, I want to come back to you. Of course, you've mentioned a host of things and how this will have an impact. Let's also understand that China too faces Trump's tariff. Both nations are looking to reduce dependence on the US markets in that sense. And China is saying that we are working towards confidence building measures. So when it comes to resuming direct flights after a gap of 5 years, also discussing easing trade barriers, also talking about reopening border trade at 3 Himalayan crossings. Is China doing its bit?
So I just want you to know, news just coming in. Prime Minister Narendra Modi has just arrived at that hotel where he's staying here in Tianjin. It's called the Wanda Hotel, and the Indian diaspora, they've traveled from across the length and breadth of China. And increasingly, if you notice, the business community, there are a large number of Indian businessmen who are working in China. They've come here in large numbers to meet Prime Minister Narendra Modi. You hear chants of Bharat Mata Ki Jai. In a moment, we will show you those visuals on your television screen. Because of strict security, because this is the SCO summit, because you have more than 10 heads of state and government who are already in Tianjin, security is so tight that, private television channels, only the Chinese state television and the host country state television, they're the only two networks that are permitted. But the people who have come here, I can hear chants of Bharat Mata Ki Jai and Vande Mataram as Prime Minister Narendra Modi is welcomed in. Chinese citizens, no, Chinese are very close to India civilizationally. So whether, it is a visit to Bodh Gaya in Bihar, where they feel this spiritual and civilizational connect to Bhagwan Gautam Buddha, and it's not just the Tibetans, even across China, when you talk to them, they want to visit Bodh Gaya, they want to visit Sarnath, they want to visit, Lama Yuru, they want to visit other parts of our country. So civilizationally, India and China have been very close.
Oh, yes.
Spiritually, they've been close. Tourism-wise, Chinese love coming to India. So when you look at these images, civilizationally, they want to connect a little more with India. Trade-wise, the two countries remain connected. People-to-people ties have always remained warm. Except, of course, you've had friction at the borders, which is very, very unfortunate. And that's something that leaves a bad taste in the mouth when you talk about otherwise a very beautiful relationship.